everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to join us for another show, another episode of the Q&A show. It is a show where we talk about nutrition, health, finances, and religion. Today, we are privileged to have Miss Linda Mariwa Schumer, and she is going to talk about emotional health. Would you like to say hello, Linda?
Thank you, Pastor Harry. Hello, everybody. I hope that this evening we are all keeping well and that we are looking forward to being able to discuss a lot more on emotional health.
Very good. Now, emotional health, you'll find, is something that is not usually dealt with. And I tried to look up what does health mean? What's the definition of health in general? According to the WHO, they define health as the wellness or the wholeness of an individual emotionally, psychologically, physically, and mentally. So you can see they include emotional health. But it is rather unfortunate to find that what is usually emphasized in our world today is physical health. Are you sick? Are you ailing? Rather than things like emotional health and mental health. And in that regard, it is important to note that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So emotional health in our society, it's really downtrodden. When you want to express your emotions, your feelings, you're often told to bottle it up or suck it up or stop being so emotional, stop overreacting. We're often told to dismiss our feelings. And as such, we end up bottling them up and having meltdowns. And that is why today we want to talk about emotional health. And you might be raising your eyebrows and asking me, what on earth is emotional health? So that is why we have Miss Linda here, who's going to try to help us decipher emotional health. Tell us, what is it?
Emotional health is basically the ability for us as human beings to recognize and handle the stresses that face us as we go through life. At the moment, we are faced with COVID-19. How well are we able to handle the stress that comes with that? The stress that is coming with staying at home, the stress that is coming with not knowing what the future holds for all of us. And emotional health basically is the ability to balance that and handle it and just be cognizant of what are your feelings, what can I do about it. Am I feeling low? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling overwhelmed? And just being aware of the different emotions that we feel and how we feel them.
Very good. So it is a matter of myself. I make sure that I acknowledge my feelings. I can pinpoint maybe why I am feeling this way, and I'm able to manage them in a particular way. That reminds me of a line from Shakespeare's play Hamlet. Act 1, Scene 3, he says, above all else, to thine own self be true. And I believe that is it. Be true to yourself. Acknowledge, why am I feeling this way? I am actually feeling this way. It's okay to be not okay. I think that's what you're saying, right?
It is true. Now more than ever before, it's extremely important that each of us are able to be calm enough and just feel ourselves, recognize exactly what you're feeling and why are you feeling the way you're feeling. We must be able to express what we're feeling. Very often, as you said, we grew up having been told we should not express ourselves. We are not allowed to express ourselves emotionally, either because of our genders or it is perceived as being the wrong place to express ourselves emotionally, even as we grieve. And I think at this particular time, we must extremely be sensitive to what we are feeling and how we are feeling it, because there's a lot happening between us and around us. I personally have gone through 3 deaths in a span of a month, and for 2 of those deaths, very close people you're not able to even be there and condole with close family, close friends. Am I able to process that? And that is the feeling that many people are facing. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were saying a child broke down last week and was just feeling overwhelmed, and he had a meltdown and was crying. And it needs us to be extremely sensitive to know that both adults and children are experiencing emotional stress, and we need to be able to take care of our emotional state so that we're able to get through this much better and come out of it in a better state. Because the truth is, our emotional health affects our mental health, it affects our physical health. The longer you stay unhappy, the more likely you are to get into depression and start suffering a lot of other psychological and psychiatric issues. The longer we do not take care of our emotional health, the more likely we are to start suffering other health ailments. That could include hypertension, diabetes even. So it is important to be able to take care of ourselves emotionally.
Thank you. I can see you're already diving into the topic of why emotional health is important. Before that, I'd just like to tell our viewers, please, we want to know if you're watching from wherever you are. So please write your name down and also where you're watching from. And also, if you have any comment or any question about emotional health, we would like you to please write it down so that we can have it answered. I'm sure Miss Linda would be delighted to give you an answer to your question. So back to the topic at hand. You've already started telling us why emotional health is important, talking about how it can affect our physical health, psychosomatic diseases and all that jazz. Would you like to delve in further?
Yeah, emotional health affects everything that is us as a person, and a healthy emotional person is thus a healthy physical person, is a healthy mental person. It affects how we relate with each other. If we are not cognizant of what we are feeling and how we are feeling and why we are feeling what we are feeling, then we are likely to snap at people simply because you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, but because you are not able to manage that, then you can easily be taken and perceived as probably a very unpleasant person, probably a very difficult person to deal with. And it's simply because you have not dealt with your emotions. I'm feeling scared, I'm frightened, I do not know how to express that. And thus, when somebody approaches me, I snap at them, I'm shouting at everybody. How am I? So our emotional health thus affects our relationships and everything else that surrounds us. A lot of people may be perceived as being unapproachable, very unfriendly, but it's because in many cases they have not processed their emotions, or they are not fully aware of what they're feeling. So they react in a certain way and then they get misunderstood, and it just keeps on, it becomes a constant roller coaster. But if you are able to still yourself and figure out, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? In the case of women, our emotional health is affected because of physical occurrences. Where am I in my cycle? Because then, depending on where I am in my cycle, if I'm experiencing premenstrual stress, then it affects my emotions. I'm probably likely to be snappy or probably extremely um, downtrodden. So it's just extremely important for people to understand themselves. And in the case that you are feeling overwhelmed, what do you do? How do you do it? Who do you share your stress with? Um, in the case of children who probably do not even understand what they are feeling, it makes it a lot easier to understand these children if, as the adults around them, we know exactly what our state is, so you're better able to empathize with these children that are around us.
All right, very good points. So emotional health is kind of like that muscle that you exercise. The more you learn how to acknowledge your emotions and channel them the right way, then the better you get at it. And also you're able to recognize other people's need and be able to help them manage theirs, like in the case of children.
True.
Right? But I'd also like to just talk about the instance of, because we're always talking about that person who has emotional breakdown, the person who has the outburst, the person who is screaming. But there's also that other person who, I don't get angry, you hurt me, I keep quiet. I tell you, nimekusamehe, but maybe for sure I am burying them deep in my soul and I'm getting crushed. Because you have those individuals who believe that I'm emotionally well. I don't scream, I don't shout, everybody likes me, but inside, because they have some buried emotions, which are in their they're in their subconscious, they've even forgotten they're there. They think that I am totally emotionally healthy, yet it is the total opposite. How do you cater to that individual?
It's being aware of oneself and just knowing that I have been offended. It is important that I express my offense the best possible way, the best amicable way. I have been offended. Will throwing a tantrum actually solve this, or is there a better way of dealing with this? How am I able to express myself? And in the case where you have people bottling and suppressing, in many cases like that, it's because we have been taught throughout life not to express ourselves. And it's important that, especially for people who are bringing up and taking care of children, to allow children to express themselves. And in the case where a child has an outburst, probably a very unnecessary one, to be able to calm them down and explain to them that the way they expressed themselves was not necessarily correct. There are better ways of expressing themselves, so that you are not telling somebody not to express themselves, but getting them to learn to express themselves in a way that they can be understood, in a way that they can be felt, in a way that they can be heard. Because we must be able to listen to each other. We must be able to feel each other. And it takes a lot of awareness from yourself as an individual, and even listening and active listening to those around you. It could be in your home, it could be in your office, it could be in your different social circles. Are you still enough to listen to somebody? Are you caring enough and empathetic enough to realize that Pastor Harry normally carries this kind of countenance, but today she wasn't that way? Is there a problem? And come and ask you about it. Because at this particular time, as we deal with COVID-19, I think now more than ever requires us to be empathetic, not just sympathetic and feel sorry for somebody, but put ourselves in the shoes of the person that you are interacting with, and understand where they're coming from, understand why they're expressing themselves the way they are. How can you help them? Are we, of course, now we are staying at home. A lot of people are in a sort of quarantine, and it becomes overwhelming. So how does somebody handle that situation of probably being in their home all by themselves for such long periods of time? What can they do? How can they do it? Do they need to absolutely be isolated, or can they reach out to people? So it's extremely important. As we talk about emotional health, we are talking about the social fabric and how we can intentionally recreate social spaces, even in these times where we are basically encapsulated in our homes as individuals, as families, and getting overwhelmed for many people.
Thank you. I'm hearing you talking about self-awareness. For me, I believe that might be one of the characteristics of an emotionally healthy person, which we will look at next. But before that, I want to just give a shout out to some of our viewers who are following the show. Thank you so much, Steve, watching all the way from Mtwapa, Kilifi County. Also, thank you, Ezekiel, who's watching from Twigs, Nyali Villa. Thank you for the show, enjoying the discussion. Thank you so much. Right, so characteristics of an emotionally healthy person, so that somebody might be like, I think I'm fine, but if we had a checklist, if you could have some few points that you could take off the list and know whether I'm emotionally healthy or not, I think that would help most of us. I believe you began with self-awareness. Maybe you can define what it is to be self-aware and whatever other qualities you believe or characteristics can denote an emotionally healthy person.
Self-awareness is basically knowing yourself. We are told that we can't quite give a definition using the same words, but how well do you know yourself? How well do you know what triggers you in different situations? How well are you able to express yourself? Am I able to, being self-aware involves me knowing that when I'm hungry, I get jittery. So I'll constantly make sure that I don't get myself to a place where I'm starving, that I now become extremely erratic. Being self-aware means that I know that as Linda, as a woman, because of my cycle, at certain times I am snappy. And when I do get snappy, I'm awake to it, calm myself down, and choose to have a different reaction as opposed to the past reaction, which would be lash out at somebody. It involves knowing that I probably need to get away from this situation, because if I get myself into this situation, it'll make me sad and it'll take me extremely long periods of time to get out of that sadness. Being self-aware is knowing that I don't want to watch too much news because the news saddens me. Can I do something different as opposed to watching the news? And it's little things like that that cause us to just dig into ourselves and to know what are your characteristics, what makes you angry, what makes you happy, around where aren't you excited, how do you manage? Do I get jittery because I'm feeling overwhelmed, because I have too much work, because I procrastinated? And thus I will choose not to be a procrastinator. so that I don't get into that state where now I'm feeling so flurry and overwhelmed by everything because I've got into a deadline, but it's because I didn't manage my time. So it's just being cognizant of all those things that get us into different emotional states. And that is, I think, key to emotional health. What is around us? Is it a messy room? Or am I in a messy room because I am in a bad emotional state? Yeah. Will cleaning up my room cause me to have a better emotional state? I'm not eating. Why am I not eating? Is it because I'm feeling sad, or am I overeating? Why am I overeating and eating the wrong things? Which is something a lot of people are finding themselves doing. Overeating, but it's because you are stressed. You are feeling overwhelmed with everything, not knowing when does this containment situation end. When am I going to be able to go to Nairobi? Probably half of my family is in Nairobi and I'm in Mombasa. How am I going to, how do I handle that? So it's keeping track of the different triggers to our emotion, whether it's positive triggers or negative triggers. And that basically takes care of and being and leads us to knowing what healthy emotionally an emotionally healthy person looks like.
Great. So, according to you, self-awareness, it is to do with identifying our emotions. We also identify our triggers, and also we make sure that we manage our emotions in a healthy way. Jessica, aware of our feelings, then the more we gain conscious control over our lives. However, I think, would you say that the reason that some of us might not want to identify our emotions, aside from the fact that maybe we've been told to bury them in some deep crevice, is because identifying my emotions means that I have to go there, I have to be vulnerable, I have to be there. I don't want somebody to label me as the the hysterical person. I don't want somebody to label me as the girl who always cries when things go wrong. It's like I don't want to be vulnerable yet, so I'd better hide them, and everyone thinks that I'm okay. So how do you help that? As much as I want to be self-aware, I don't want to lay myself bare, because that is what vulnerability is all about.
Um, Bearing ourselves bare is something that I think it takes a lot of practice for us to get there, but we do need to get there, because when we have unresolved emotion, then we end up suffering a lot of other things. We end up having failed relationships or very erratic relationships. Bearing ourselves bare and being self aware helps us understand people. As we understand ourselves, we're better able to understand the person next to us. We're better able to empathize and see where they're coming from. When you express yourself and people know that this is it and this is the way this person is, then they're also better able to handle you and know what to do with you or how to break certain news to you. There's people you'll give news that you probably consider as very heavy news, and they're pretty good at handling it. And there's somebody else you'll give equally the same news and they can't. But when we know that this is the way so and so is, then we are better able to handle you. We are better able to prepare on how to break such a news to you. We are then able to connect with each other better. So I think it's very scary to be vulnerable, but it is something that we need to practice to be. be as vulnerable as we can be, and be comfortable with ourselves. Because then when we're comfortable with ourselves, the next person is also comfortable with us a lot more.
Great. So we are saying that vulnerability is something that can be achieved with practice and lots of courage. And I believe you've also brought us to our second point, being comfortable with ourselves, self-acceptance. I need to be self-aware, but I also need to accept myself. Could you tell us more about that in regard to emotional health?
Accepting ourselves is basically when we are self-aware, then you know what your limitations are. You know how far you can stretch yourself. And you're able to just say, I can only do this much. I cannot go further than this. I'm unable to go further than this. Or you are able to then challenge yourself. This is where I feel I can reach, but I'm willing to stretch it a little further. What can I do with myself? What do I accept? What can't I accept? Where am I willing to go and where am I not willing to go? You know? And that basically is it.
Right. I'm able to accept myself, therefore I can better cope with whatever challenges may come my way with clarity.
And ask for help when you need it, because when you know what your limitations are, then it's very easy for you to say, help, I need help. This, I can't do more than this. I need to get some help. So, and that is also vulnerability, being able to ask for help. A lot of us live a life whereby we look like supermen and superwomen, and asking for help is something that we are very scared to do. But now more than ever, when you can't do something, ask for help. You never know who can help you and who is able to solve your problem. Emotional help means that we are seeking for help when we need the help and not choosing to handle things on our own, because we really don't need to handle things on our own.
Great. I think maybe one of the reasons we refuse to ask for help, aside from being vulnerable, is we feel like it will reduce us, like we're not good enough. That's why I need to get the extra leg up, but that of course is not the case. So far we've dealt with two characteristics. We've looked at self-awareness and self-acceptance. What other characteristic of emotional awareness, emotional health, would you like to tell us about?
I think another characteristic is being rooted in faith. As a Christian, being rooted in faith goes a long way in ensuring that I'm emotionally stable and emotionally healthy. Where do I run to for help other than just my fellow human being? Am I able to seek God's face and pour out my heart to God, who is my creator and who knows me better than anybody else, to express to God that I am sad. I am sad, I need help. I am feeling overwhelmed. God, I need you to come through. And I know we were talking earlier, and we were even talking about the different biblical characters that have been overwhelmed. And I mean, even Jesus, at the point at which he felt emotionally overwhelmed, went back to God, his Father, and said, take this cup away from me, not my will, but thine. So, going back and reflecting with God, is one of those places that ensures that one is emotionally healthy.
It's wonderful. I was reading this article on positivepsychology.com. Do you know they said that according to studies, they say that those who are spiritually healthy live longer. They actually purport that those with higher levels of spiritual health show higher instances of emotional health as well. So it ties in well with the third characteristic you're telling us of an emotionally healthy person. You have taken care of your spiritual health, you have a relationship with God. Right, and now we have to wrap up our show because of time. So, would you like to give us some concluding remarks?
I think for me it would be to tell everybody out there, as you seek to be emotionally healthy, eat healthy, sleep when you should be asleep for the recommended hours at least. We find ourselves spending a lot more time awake, but getting enough sleep, exercise as much as we can, seek for help. I mean, there is no problem with seeking the help of a counselor and speaking out with somebody who will not pass judgment. If you're scared to share whatever you're going through with your friend, for example, or your parents or your spouse, seek the help of a counselor as well. Eat healthy, um, and be able to breathe in and breathe out. It's amazing what breathing, taking in some deep breaths and breathing out slowly, the effect that has on a person when you feel overwhelmed. So just be mindful about everything that you're doing and don't multitask. Do a task at a time. Get over with one task and move on to the next so that you're not feeling overwhelmed and in a flurry. Pray and read the Word of God now more than ever. The Bible for us as Christians has so many comforting verses and books that we can draw from. So the Psalms is a good place to start.
Thank you very much. Socrates said, my friend, care for your psyche, know thyself. For once we know ourselves, we may learn how to care for ourselves. That is the message that we have received today. Make sure that you are self-aware, make sure that there is self-acceptance within yourself, and make sure that you are maintaining your spiritual health. It is okay not to be okay. Look for help, reach out for it. It's okay to be vulnerable. You are cared for and loved by the Almighty God. And that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us for this show. Thank you so much, our viewers, for participating. Shout out to our media team for setting all this up. I have been your host, Harry Rianga. Catch you next week, same time, same place for the Q&A show. Bye.